Hello everyone, my name is Michael Tribble Godani. I'm here alongside Reid, Rapidcasting Melton. Welcome.
Oh, hello there. It's good to be here.
Yeah, nice man. So, first thing I want to start off with is we had a week break for the Lunar New Year Festival, and then they come back in the LPL with the EDG OMG game, something we've been looking forward to. And the first surprise that struck me was, of course, OMG coming out with the San Xiang bot lane. What was your
Yeah.
opinion about that? How shocked were you when you saw that?
Well, I was actually really more concerned about whether or not this was going to be a permanent situation because you don't just nobody says, "Hey, you know what would be a good idea? Let's bench Uzi." Like nobody, I would not necessarily have thought of that as a solution to add depth to your team. But OMG actually tweeted out during the event that they were actually trying to add more strategic depth to their team. And I think Karen Moser pointed this out on Twitter that while San will never give you the sort of highs that Uzi will give you, whether
Mm-hmm.
when you just dive 1v5 and get a pentakill, like San's never going to do that. But what he does offer you is a much more consistent play style. And same thing with switching out Xiang as their support. While Cloud was always known for being a very sort of like lane dominant support, he's the one that sort of like picks up the AD carry and says, "All right, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go do this." And with UZI, that actually worked out really well because UZI was more than happy to just follow up, go for these crazy dives and plays and team fights and stuff like that. But with the San Xiang combo, it was especially in game number one, for example,
Mm-hmm.
it was sort of the battle between going and Pawn, who could carry their game the hardest.
Oh
And
yeah.
I just kept looking at San and Xiang, and I'm like, well, they're not doing badly. They're just not doing super well either. I think they were like 1-1 or 1-0 for like the first 30 minutes of the game. And you
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
look
True.
at yourself and you're like, well, they need a carry from somewhere other than just going. And San and Jiang, they kept farming. They never died, but they also never really killed anyone until it got down to like the 30, 40-minute mark. And you finally started to see, hey, wait a second. This is actually an OMG composition that's working really well together. Just took a little bit of time to get going.
Yeah. Well, what I noticed really when I was looking at that bot line is first of all that Sun was picking up the brutalizer very early, and for that really that early aggression, and actually just they were just winning trades non-stop with Deft and Mako. I was just unfortunately I couldn't just lock the camera on there because I don't have the client, of course, but I would have really wanted to see just the bot lane non-stop that match. But every time the camera went there, you saw Deft and Mako being on less health than San and Xiang, and also winning in CS, which is really, yeah, it's just different for San to just play a little bit more dominant in his lane, I think.
Yeah, and Son has always been that player. Like we said, consistency is sort of the big theme word with him. He's got I wouldn't say a strong lane phase from the perspective that he can kill the other guy, but he's got great mechanics. His wave positioning is really, really good,
Yeah.
which, granted, is dependent on the support that you're with, but he knows exactly where to keep it. And like we said, he picks carries that he can farm with. So you're never going to see quite the same, like Vayne plays that you would with UZI, who's more based on CSing champions. But San had a great lane phase. He went Brutalizer first, which is a little bit questionable. But what it does ensure is that you can capitalize off of things like Dark Bindings, like
Yeah.
stun cards. It just gives you that big damage power spike so that you can synergize well with things like Cool's early teleports or Xiang landing a Dark Binding.
No, definitely, and especially the Graves Morgana, I think is a little bit underestimated. But I think you also see it in the higher solo queue elos that actually the Graves Morgana is such a strong bot lane right now because of also the buffs that Graves got, and he can just quick draw in. He gets that black shield, so he's immune to most of the damage that Corki does. To every damage that the support Veigar does, he's immune to the stun. So he's got like this free damage output and just gets out. I think it's a very strong pick from them. And of course, just Xiang's playing another purple champion. It's just awesome. after the Syndra, now going on to the Morgana. So hey, maybe
like,
the Viger is the next
how
thing,
many
man.
purple champions are there? I don't know. Vigar's a little bit more of a blue dress kind of champion.
Well,
So,
time to pick up a purple skin then.
or time to never play Vigar again. At least after this patch, we're never going to see Vigar played competitively. So you got to get it while you can.
Yeah, man. I mean, it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah, and I actually really like to see a lot of Vigars. And while China may have pulled it out initially, there's this guy, interesting story about support Vigar. A lot of people will tell you, hey, this is, a new support pick. Guys like Lemon Nation have been spamming it and been, really bringing it to the forefront of the North American scene. But way back in the day, there's this team called Saga, and they were a little bit more well known when they were picked up by the Australian organization Seraphic Nexus. They had this support player, and his name was Only Support Vagar. And so you kind of get the idea. Of what his champion pool includes. It's literally Only Support Vagar, and he actually has changed his name. His name is Masaru now. He's a Korean player, came over to North America, and he just revolutionized the entire support Vagar. He brought it to the forefront. I think he used to go like boots of mobility. As his first item, just so that you can run up to somebody, land that stun, and as long as you're good enough at landing it on the edge, it works out really well. And after watching that, I was like, wait a second, this guy's obviously trolling, but it worked out super well, and I've seen him do really well with it. And then eventually it trickles down throughout the a little bit on the North American scene, makes its way over to China, and now you're seeing it being played in the biggest leagues in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think that if you play champion well enough, you can. I mean, I believe that Godani can play Reid support or Aurelia support. I think that would work fine for him. He knows the champion so well, he could just make it work, Now, but I really like the Viger support, just these off-meta picks, they really bring some more depth to the game now. We also had it with the Warwick beginning of the season. I really like seeing the Warwick, just in competitive play, only if it was for like 1 or 2 weeks. So that was fun to see. Yeah, let's get back onto the pick and ban phase, because basically they were banning Pawn and Cool away, and a little bit of Koro and Go going with the bans in game 1.
Yeah, game 1 bans, just to remind everybody, OMG banned Lulu, Azir, and Lissandra.
Yeah.
So not necessarily focusing Pawn only. You kind of catch both Pawn and Koro in those sort of hybrid bans. A lot of flex picks there, like Lissandra. And of course, we have seen some top lane Azir, not primarily out of LPL, but just in general. And there used to be a big top lane Lulu craze, although I think it was more going that used to play that, and of course you don't really see too many Lulus. And interestingly enough, OMG banning out the Lulu here. We've seen in Korea the Lulu pick has been doing very, very poorly. It started out with guys like Coco having incredible mid lane Lulu games, got up to like over 1,000 AP, and people are like, wow, mid lane Lulu looks good, it's coming back. And then recently it's really been struggling. So interesting to see that chosen as a ban here for OMG.
Yeah, it's more of a supportive pick, right? I mean, if you can really get that knock up, if you can really get the W onto a Rengar or onto a Maokai, maybe, it's a really strong pick. But I think there are just a lot of better picks right now in the meta. Especially if you see pawns in Italy, for example. I mean, let him play in Italy every game.
Yeah, and that was actually the last pick, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
For EDG, and so you're like, all right, they're saving Pawn's champion for last. It's not a big mystery that he's going to pick something that he believes he can do very well against Cool's Twisted Fate, and that was the biggest sort of defining champion for OMG's lineup. That you expect to see Rek'Sai, Nars, Graves, maybe a little bit interesting to see that Morgana out there, but the mid lane Twisted Fate was what I was most excited to see from this game. And in case you guys haven't seen the game, go watch it. But spoiler alert, Pawn destroyed him. Pawn, I have not seen a mid lane in Italy in a very long time, outside of guys like North American challenger player Inox that likes to play mid lane in Italy. But other than that, mid lane in Italy has really taken a few hits. But Pawn, you wouldn't know it having watched this play.
No, you wouldn't realize it actually. He just played it fantastic. I mean, if you look at Cool's performance the last few weeks, okay, his Ari and his LeBlanc got taken away, but he was just he was carrying solo the last few games. I mean, he was just literally destroying people, and now he just got he just got played, man, by Pawn.
And to be fair, this is fairly characteristic of a lot of OMG games. I feel like they may be the spiritual successors of teams like IG and Starhorn Royal Club, who last season would continually split 1-1, 1-1, 1-1 all the time. And so it's not uncommon to see OMG go into a game, completely get stomped, or completely stomp, and then have the exact opposite thing happen later on. So Cool has been having some ups and downs, but when he looks good, he looks very, very good.
Oh yeah.
This was not one of those games.
No, definitely not. I mean, he just got 1v1 by Pawn. I mean, despite the fact that they split the sets, I mean, I think he is the biggest well, it sounds so negative, the biggest loser, but he lost both games really hard, and that was really actually one of the down points. What I did realize and what I did find really, well, not strange, but it made impression on me that the first blood in the first game onto Koro was that Loveling was actually doing his blue buff. He got one of the golems, but like Gogong probably said like, come here, come kill Koro now. And he just went up, left his blue buff, and he just got the easy first blood on him. And if you actually checked on to Koro, his trinket was active, so Gogong probably knew he didn't ward it. And just a fast, easy first blood, and from there on, I mean, Gogong just got going and he just started snowballing through the game, really.
Yeah, it was pretty ridiculous to watch Going, and honestly,
his first NAR game, eh? His first NAR game in LPL. I mean,
they actually highlighted that. The commentators mentioned that this is a champion that Going hasn't really brought out this season, and it's not really a surprise to see NAR in the top lane, but it is kind of a surprise to see it coming out of Going. And Going, he's got such a great name because when he gets going, he is one of the scariest top laners in LPL. If you've ever seen the guy too, he just has this like visibly intimidating presence. Like biggest, I don't know, jawline of the entire LPL. He just looks like a monster, and he proves it over and over again. Last season, I believe there were several highlights of him like 1v2ing top lane as I think it was Shyvana. Was one of his big champions last season, and this game was just highlight reel for Going. I think he came out of lane phase like 6-1, and just he didn't hard carry the game, but what he did was provide such a huge presence as that Mega Gnar that OMG sort of limped along, carried by him through the mid game, and wound up getting late enough into the game where they were able to at least put up a little bit more of a fight.
Yeah, because that what you say, his presence in the team fights was incredible. His fury management was just next level, really. I mean, he played really one of the best Nars that I've seen in competitive play. I mean, every time there was a fight, you saw Going his fury bar being around 90, 95. It was just on spot every single time. It was really, really something impressive to see, because that's the skill level of the Gnar to get into those team fights with almost getting to that Mega Gnar. And this was just perfect, man. His first competitive game, just really A plus, if you ask me, for him.
Right. It's not like he's never played Gnar before in like solo queue. He's obviously very, very well practiced on the champion. And like you said, the fury management is what's really impressive, because that's supposed to be like the randomizing factor that it means that you can't just transform into Mega Gnar whenever you want to. But you wouldn't know it watching his play. He was able to get those transformations incredibly accurately for team fights, and like we said, just control those team fights well enough so that OMG didn't just straight up lose the game off of losing lanes everywhere else.
Yeah, definitely. Something I want to point out is around the 9 minute and 10 seconds mark in the game, you see that actually Loveling, who picked up an early sidestone, he really made sure that Going, he was 1-0 at that time, that he had like a free farm on the top lane, warding the tri-bush from Koro, warding the bush on the other side of the red buff. So he had complete vision of any ganks, and like within 2 or 3 minutes later, Going went from a 1-0 to a 3-0 Gnar.
Yeah, it was really ridiculous.
It was really good. I mean, finally we see Loveling again protecting Going. Something we haven't seen the last few weeks. I mean, we've seen 4 or 5 man tower dives on Going without any vision. And this was really, I was a little bit shocked, to be honest, to see Loveling play the way he did in the early game.
Right, and you'd never see this style out of a lot of North American teams because traditionally, at least as far as North America is concerned, maybe less so now with guys like Quas and Hanser being played, but you don't really see a lot of top lane carries. Now, of course, over in like EU LCS, you've got guys like Werlib, the Giants top laner, who knows all about hard carrying from the top lane, and you have situations like this where OMG are saying, "Look." Pawn is destroying Cool. He's playing Twisted Fate, so he should theoretically be able to just sit in lane, wave clear, and not die too much to Pawn. That was unfortunately not the case. But like you said, Loveling comboing with Go-Going to keep him safe with wards to help snowball him early on, it just really paid off dividends for OMG.
Yeah, it was really, really a good job. I mean, yeah, he eventually won the game for them, so that was good. And what I found very, very amazing about EDG again, and it amazes me every single match, is their control of the dragon. That first dragon that they almost always pick up. They always pick out the perfect time. This time they picked it up around 11 minutes, I think. The bot lane recalled, Cool recalled. They see that and they bam, they take that dragon. And it was, you see it and normally it would be like, all right, they pick up the dragon, but it's like this every single game. They do it every single game. It's really amazing to see how their objective control is.
Yeah, and that was what was consistent throughout both series is that EDG really prioritized that first dragon. And once again, to compare it to other regions, that is not something that is super essential. North American LCS specifically, you see teams actually avoid the first dragons pretty consistently and go for more of a turret push style of gameplay because technically, like, first dragon doesn't really give you all that many stats. You don't get a lot of gold, you get a little bit of experience, but the 6% additional stats as far as damage stats go isn't really very impactful early on. But what EDG like to do with it is when you get the first dragon, they'll sort of snowball that as far as just area control on the map and say, look, we came down here, we got the vision, we got the dragon, and then use that to have an easier time coming back for dragon number 2 and 3, and then kind of snowballing that on towards future objectives.
Because if you saw it when they picked up the first dragon, they had like one ward over the wall, but they just knew all right. OMG is not right here. They're in the fountain. We're gonna take it. And right afterwards, you see the wards coming out. Like, all right, we got this area right now. So for the next 3 minutes, we got vision, we got control, and then you can already start setting up afterwards for the next dragon, which they did. And it's just, yeah, I think they got one of the best objective controls together with GE Tigers at this point. And it's really, it's really amazing to see. I'm really looking forward how this team is actually going to evolve into the upcoming summer split, and yeah, maybe even Worlds to look even more further ahead. But it's really impressive gameplay that they're showing here again.
Yeah, a Worlds without EDG would be very surprising for me at this point. I mean, you have the top 1 and 2 teams in LPL battling it out, and from a region where you have a very well-defined bottom of the tier list, these two teams, it's kind of unfathomable to see them out of maybe the top 3. So I'm excited to see EDG versus OMG. When I saw it on the schedule, we, like you said, just gotten done with a long break, and this game did not disappoint. You had great performances by Going, not just in the 1v1, but also in team fights, controlling that. And Pawn's Nidalee looked like Faker and Goong when Nidalee was at the height of her strength in competitive play, where you just land a spear, you're killing everybody, and you just make it look easy. Pawn turning those spears into click abilities, just really put on a show there. I think by 20 minutes he was like 5-1 or something crazy like that, and just kept being a menace the entire fight, even when some of his lanes started falling behind. Specifically, Cora won this game that did not have a very strong showing, could never really get anything going versus Going.
Well, actually, the way that OMG played that one against Cora, it reminded me of SKT versus Najin this week, game 3, where they were just camping for Marin on the top lane non-stop, and they just eliminated that Lissandra, and he was just pretty much useless the rest of the game. I felt a little bit bad for him though.
Right.
It's really a bad feeling when you just get camped and you're like, you know what? I don't care if this is the pros. I just want to go AFK, man. Just because you're not doing anything in the game. You don't have any presence in team fights. You got no farm. he felt a little bit useless. I felt a little bit bad for him though.
Yeah, but to be fair, Koro did react relatively well to being so far behind. He
Yeah.
went first item Leandri's Torment, which
Yeah.
basically means that since half of your skill set actually includes items with slows, you get a lot of bonus damage off of that item. And so all you turn into sort of an ult bot, but it can still be something that's able to control team fights in somewhat similar way that Going was able to control team fights. Only difference is that Going kind of got in there and was a big force himself, whereas Koro kind of had to throw down the equalizer and then die.
Alt used, die now, job done, simple.
That's pretty much the way it went. But let's kind of move on towards the end of the game, because it was kind of a sinking feeling that you get. You watch EDG dominate their mid lane. See Pawn, I think at around 30 minutes, he had like 7 kills and just like it was getting solo kills on Cool in the mid lane. It was awesome to watch. But then OMG really switched things up, and they're like, all right, so what we're gonna have Cool go for split pushes, and even though he was like 0-4, he was still able to out CS Pawn.
Yeah.
And split push down, I think, 2 second-tier turrets at that point. So really started to see a lot more effectiveness out of him, even though he was set so far behind in lane.
Yeah, you mentioned the 30-minute mark. It's actually the moment where EDG with Pawn and Def, they actually overextend. Cool uses his ultimate, and they just collapse on them. And this is really what I love to see about the Chinese and the Korean scene. When they get that pick and the whole team is there, they just literally collapse and they just rush through that team. Because Pawn, he went down first due to Cool, and then they just get cleaned up because Def got picked up by Xiang's binding, and that was pretty much actually GG at that point. From that point, OMG really started rolling, I think.
Yeah, and once you kill Deft and Pawn, you could see that OMG were really not. They didn't consider this game as one that they were far behind in. They were still just looking for these opportunities to find picks, and EDG just gave it to him. And to be fair, it's kind of difficult to avoid getting picked at some point in the game with things like Twisted Fate and Jiang's Dark Binding, but EDG just were not playing it as a team. They had set Koro all the way down to the bottom lane, and while he could have teleported into a team fight, it wasn't a team fight. They were just off by themselves and got picked off. And from that point on, OMG went to take the Baron, and while they did give up, I think they gave up a turret. Yeah, base turret did go down off of that push.
Yeah.
But with the Baron buff, OMG just got the last little bit of power that they were looking for, and from there on out, you could see EDG were really a lot more afraid of them in team fights, specifically when it came down to, I think the next dragon after that was a big point of contention.
Yeah, definitely. What I also found very amazing actually about Gogoing's Gnar was that normally you see the Narvan combo, and there was some point where they were sieging the bot turret, and Clearlove actually uses Cataclysm, and Gogoing uses ultimate on 3 people against the side of the Cataclysm, and I was like, yeah, this is the Narvan combo from a different perspective, really. Just using your enemy's abilities against them was really, really nice. I don't know if you've seen that part or can recall it.
Oh, I'm thinking about it because as it gets towards the end of the game, what was most impressive for me is OMG just saying, look, we've had a rough game so far, but at the same time, Baron buff and just the way that they were able to use that, just very, very impressive. Even with the big barriers to their team fighting, like the Veigar stun, that Event Horizon, just so difficult to deal with. With Going as tanky as he was in that fight, there was just really no worries. He could walk right into the stun and still be that big wall that the rest of his team needed. And with Cool finally getting that the Death Cap combo and Dark Bindings continuing to land for Jiang, just really great to see OMG just band together and be the dark forces that they really were at the end of last season, kind of coming back into illustrating, even with some new players, why they deserve that top spot in the standings.
Yeah, definitely. So they pick up the first game after 44 minutes. Gogoing ended 9-3-12. Sun ended 6-1-11. Really, really did great if you look at the numbers. And then Pawn goes down 12-4-2. That's really a shame. He deserved more. He deserved a lot more.
And it's not like he's in EDG prison or anything. Everybody on EDG has had outstanding games at least at one point or another in LPL this season.
No,
It was just kind of the struggle to see him doing so well every single moment. He's always finding ways to get solo kills, finding ways to pick off kills at the end of team fights to clean things up. But at the end of the day, it just wasn't enough. Nidalee alone, not able to deal with big tanky front lines like Leveling and Going. And in the end, the team play from OMG was able to pick themselves up game one.
Yeah, definitely. So it was a great game one. When I was watching it, the first thing what I said when we saw Sun and Xiang was like, am I getting trolled again? Really? Are you guys gonna troll me with this bot lane? Are you just kidding me? I've been waiting for this for like 2 weeks, and you're gonna troll me, but it worked out fine. And then in the second game, they bring out Uzi and Cloud, and I actually just want to talk about that Uzi Sun difference, because I thought Sun performed pretty well at Worlds, especially when Cloud came in. He just started getting rolling better and better. And I was not too excited about Uzi actually joining OMG, especially the way that OMG is playing now this spring split, and how they're evolving now, actually taking him into the team fights and how he participates in them. So I was not really excited about Uzi. I don't know how you look at it.
Uzi has always been that guy that makes a name for himself individually. Like, he's always the guy that goes in, makes the flashy plays, and so, he's got a big name for himself. But what was so difficult for his time on, I believe it was I think it was Starhorn last season, was that, he and Insec would make these cool duo plays because they were just playing so aggressively. But it was very difficult for me to find players who would sort of mesh with that, with his play style, just because it is so hyper aggressive. And especially with things like, with a lot of like the 1v1 carries like Twitch and Vayne kind of falling out of the meta. I wasn't sure exactly how Uzi's play style would translate to this next season, but he's still one of the best AD carries in the game. And while his champion pool, at least as far as the aggressive 1v1s, might have taken a little bit of a hit, at least in games like game number 2 when he came in there with Cloud, was a game that I thought was going to illustrate a lot of promise, just because I've always been a big fan of Cloud as a player, at least as a contrast to Dota7, their traditional support. But this game did not really impress me as far as that bottom lane was concerned. They went even in lane, actually a little bit behind in CS out of the lane phase, and that's where Uzi has always been able to exert so much aggressive pressure that I just didn't see this game.
Yeah, he played the Corki.
That's right. He did play Corki, which is a little bit more of a passive sort of sit back and fire rockets. You can go aggressive and do a lot of burst damage, at least early on, but I don't know. It didn't seem like he had quite as much of an effect as Deft, who was really able to find not only those rocket snipes, but I think he came out of lane phase like 3 or 4 kills, and after the 20-minute mark, he got rolling in a way that Uzi never could.
He picked up a Quadra at some point, and then you had a fat Kassadin and a fat Jinx, so that was, yeah, you can't win anymore then. One thing I was surprised about was Cloud going aggressive onto the Annie on the bot lane. I believe it was around like 5-minute mark where he flashed in, he flailed her backwards, and then he threw the hook in, and I think he even used the ignite. And I actually expected Uzi to just Valkyrie in, especially since he had both his summoners, and just to pick up that kill. And I was really surprised of him not going in right there. Still having his heal though. Maybe even trading kill, something he does often, or used to do often. I don't know. I was a little bit disappointed actually about his playstyle in lane.
Well, and specifically the coordination that, like you said, was expected there. I remember him going in flash, ignite, and I'm not sure necessarily if there would have been kill potential if Uzi had followed up, but a bad decision that everyone follows is always going to be better than a good decision that not everybody follows. So yeah. It was a little bit rough watching them, and specifically because of the style that Deft and Arnico played. It was like basically if we don't lose this lane, then we'll win later on anyway. Because it was sort of a protect the deft kind of comp. You had Clear Love, who would always initiate, and you had Annie, who would just stun everybody if they got remotely close to deft.
Yeah.
And deft sort of put up a highlight reel just kiting around the back of the team fight.
Yeah, what you really saw, what I really admire about Mako is he was using that Tibbers really as 100% peel.
Mm-hmm.
Every single time. So not what you see with other Annie comps where they use it aggressively, and then when eventually the AD carry gets dove, there's like nothing to do. No, he literally waited. Alright, so Gogoing's Hackerim is gonna jump onto Def right now. I stun him. Okay, Loveling is coming in. Alright, then I use the Tibbers. So every time there was like this follow-up by Mako was really, really well played in team fights. I think this game they really got outplayed, outskilled, outclassed by EDG.
And another thing, speaking of being outclassed, was the choice of a top laner for Gogoing. Now, this is a guy that had just come off of an incredibly impressive Gnar performance in game number 1, and he kind of I don't want to call it pulling a smeb, because this was going on almost at the same time as GE Tigers were playing off against I believe it was IM. And then so Smeb realizes he and his team have maybe a little bit of leeway as far as their skill differences are concerned. So he went this Ignite Teleport Hecarim in the top lane, and I believe they also ran Victor mid at the same time. So it was a crazy game there. And so then to see the exact same champion choice by Gogoing, I was like, I don't really think there's quite that much of a skill differential between both of these teams. He gets ganked, gives up first blood, and at that point, well, from then on, you realize that Gogoing was never going to be able to really fulfill the same role that he had in game number 1.
No, I mean if you give Kassadin that first kill there, he's just gonna snowball so hard.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happened. Yeah. Koro started that kill gave him an early catalyst, which gave him more than enough sustain and defensive stats to make it through the lane phase. And with Gogoing continually being susceptible to ganks, it was just kind of the Koro show. And a direct sort of role reversal from game number 1. This time it was Koro killing everybody and Gogoing having a little bit more of a difficult game.
Yeah, we're talking about a 4-0 Kassadin at 8 minutes.
8 minutes, like
8 minutes, a kill per 2 minutes for a top laner. It's just sick if you think about it. It's really incredible.
And this is one of the reasons that I love China as a region, is because they believe in the role of the top lane carry. North America, I feel, is really hesitant to devote a lot of resources into top laners right now, unless you have somebody who's like dominant on split pushing, like guys like Zion Spartan used to be when he was on Coast. Everybody knew if Zion Spartan plays a carry top laner, you're gonna have problems because he knew how to carry. And it was really
we've seen the Nasus, man.
I remember those games, man.
Those stacks, man.
I really hope that comes back. But at least in this game, it was Koro playing Kassadin. Of course, this is unnerfed Kassadin, just incredibly dominant force. And all of this is before he even had a Rod of Ages. Like, he's just doing this off of pure skill and itemization early. So
blasting wand.
Yeah, that blasting wand, man. Apparently, it's all you need. And so after the lane phase, EDG come out ahead in the top lane, but at the same time, no one on OMG had really been completely shut down at that point. So while there is a small advantage for Edward Gaming, I still believed OMG had what it took as far as like objective control, which is something that EDG was at least traditionally a little bit stronger with, especially like you consider game number 1, they got the first dragon, and they were always at least ready to contest those early objectives.
Yeah, what I really liked is like at the 10-minute mark, Pawn actually comes to the bot line and they dive Uzi and Cloud, and they just pick up 2 kills right there, and they really started to play that OMG style of playing, which EDG also loves, and it was really working out. I mean, everything was working out for them, and they were going in so hard onto every single lane. Every lane was just winning hard, was snowballing. Cloud on his LeBlanc. I mean, his last performance was it against King or LGD that he played the LeBlanc? I believe it was LGD.
I think it was LGD the last time they played.
He just obliterated that whole team with his LeBlanc.
Did you mean pawn
No,
or
cool.
cool? Cool. Okay, yeah, you said cloud. I was like,
Oh, I said
wait a
cloud. I'm
second.
sorry. I'm sorry.
Support LeBlanc was a thing, but not for very long.
It's not gonna work here.
Yeah, probably not. And like we said earlier, the substitution of AD carry and support was kind of the big theme of this series for OMG. They sub in San and Xiang, and it actually worked out really, really well, which really surprised me. I've never been a super big fan of San just because I feel like he's kind of the cop of OMG. That guy that you put in that you know is always going to do well and put up
Hmm.
consistent numbers, but never somebody you expect to, get pentakills back to back or anything.
So yeah, I think the big difference really was that OZI and Cloud actually haven't really ever played together in a official game. This is really like the first game together. And well, Xiang and San have been around for a long time. Despite the fact that Xiang always played mid if needed. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's still something that has to grow, or I really don't know. I don't know.
Well, that's the big thing that we need to find out is the different synergies between OMG's duo lane. And you got North American teams like Dignitas who are sort of on the ball as far as or on the fence. That's what it was with finding a new jungler. So they'll play one jungler one game in LCS or 1 week, and then next week they'll have a new jungler. And so they're trying things out in a little bit more of a live testing environment rather than just testing it out in scrims. They're actually giving their test candidates LCS experience, and I really appreciate that. While it may cause you to take a hit towards your win loss ratio, it is going to be the best way that you can get to determine how different players really face off in professional competition. And that's what OMG is doing here. I really respect them for putting up different combos of players. And the Uzi Cloud lane didn't work out due to, like we mentioned earlier, a notable lack of synergy, but they also faced a lot of adversity. The consistent dives that EDG put down on them was a little bit difficult to deal with. So this was never really going to be a game where they just had that easy, trip through the lane phase that could carry things out.
No, definitely. The thing is, though, with the OMG organization, if you want to try it out, I mean, I'm the last person, that should say don't do it, but please don't do it in an EDG OMG game. Just if you can 2-0 EDG, please just do it, and don't troll us with trying these things out on the bot lane.
Well, to be fair, saying "don't troll us" is probably an emotion that a lot of OMG fans have had this split. OMG's champion choices and playstyles this season have been somewhat questionable at times. And every game that I watch of OMG isn't like, hey, I'm going to watch one of the best teams in the world, smash some noobs and stuff. It is, well, how are OMG going to troll us this week?
Yeah,
they,
that's the big question, man. It's one big troll fest every single game.
Well, maybe not every single game. Like if they lose the first game from trolling or doing something really strange, then the second game they play super seriously, and it's just a pleasure to watch them play. But every once in a while they'll pull out these champions, these picks, strategies that I don't know where they get them from. They're fun to watch, but maybe not necessarily indicative of how they'd play at Game 5 in the Grand Finals at Worlds or something.
No, I mean, just what you say, like they're trolling us. They're trolling us incredibly hard when you look at the fact that, for example, now they win the first game, and
Mm-hmm.
you're all psyched up because like, all right, except for Cool and maybe Loveling, they actually really played well. They put out good numbers. We got rolling. Maybe they can actually 2-0 EDG like Snake did, and then that second game comes out and you see the hacker him with the ignite teleport, and you're like, okay, that's all you can just say. It's like, okay.
Well, to be fair, there's this secret top laner backdoor club that that all the world's best top laners play in, and it's sort of like going was hanging out with Smeb, and he's like, hey, how's that ignite teleport top lane Hecarim work out for you? And Smeb's like, no sweat, man, worked fine versus Incredible Miracle, easy peasy. And so maybe they make a bet. They're just like, hey, we're gonna play it both at the same time to see who does better. Smeb smashed with it. Going not quite as great an experience.
No, but I mean, no. If you look at it just from a professional point of view, it's like, come on, you can ace one of the best teams in the world. Just do it, you
I
know?
mean, If you've got that potential, then why not put your money where your mouth is? So to finish off the analysis of game number 2, it basically came down to a relatively even as far as like the score was concerned. Right around the mid-game 20-minute mark, there's like a 1,000 to 2,000 gold difference. It was in EDG's favor primarily just because Koro and Deft were doing so well. But things really started to fall apart right around that 20-minute mark, where OMG sort of adventured up into the upper jungle of EDG, trying to push down the second-tier top lane turret. But EDG just really put their resources in exactly the right position, realized the potential push up top lane, and kind of shut them down from that point on.
Yeah, I'm watching that fight actually right now, and they literally go 1 for 5.
Yeah, it was really the big turning point. And what was so exciting about that fight is that Annie got picked off initially, so already it's a bad start to the fight for EDG. And then you realize that Deft and Koro can just kill everyone. They clean up the fight. I believe that was a quadra kill for Deft, and it was kind of all over from that point on.
Oh yeah, it was that Koro just stealing that pentakill away, man.
Koro kind of pulled a Dyrus, saw him do that, stole Wild Turtle's second pentakill. And now exactly the same thing happening here. Koro scumbagging it out there at the very end and taking it away from Deft.
It's not only OMG that's trolling, man. It's happened all over. It happens everywhere.
No pentakills allowed. No. Although, I believe we did. There've been quite a few pentakills this week. I know the Japanese scene, they had 3 pentakills in one day.
Oh wow!
So that is that's one way to get yourself a lot of notoriety. And situations like this almost, but not quite. I believe we did see the first LPL pentakill. I think it was last week, wasn't it? I may be mistaken.
Also today, from Gamte's Hui. It was actually his debut.
I don't know what I was watching when I was seeing Huey play. That was the Rek'Sai penta at like 12 minutes in. Yeah. It's like it's not even like 30-40 minutes into the game. He comes in, gets a penta on a jungler. Like, how often do you see jungle pentakills? It's a new one on me. But yeah, pentas everywhere, but not this game.
Not this game, unfortunately. Just denied. But they rounded up in 26 minutes, and basically I think the biggest word for the second game is just get stomped.
Yeah, and honestly, this day was actually a really big day for Stomps. We had a pre-20-minute victory for Vici Gaming versus Energy Pacemaker. That was just like, you never even gave them a chance to surrender. It was just like dropping the hammer. And after having a very, very close, very methodical game number 1, OMG just I didn't have it as far as their lanes were concerned. Lanes that won in game 1, lost in game number 2, and EDG were just not having it. Especially, there's a point towards the end of the game where Going kind of like makes a trip around the world. He went top lane and then looped all the way back around, trying to make the great escape, but eventually could not make it away. And EDG kind of killed everyone from that point on.
That would have been a great escape. I was actually really hoping for him to escape. It would have been a great highlight. What I do want to mention is, they split this series. OMG does actually break the 14 win streak from EDG. I think the top 3 right now, which is Snake, OMG, and EDG, they're really close together. I mean, EDG drops 2 games to Snake and drops 1 to OMG. So I think we can really look forward to an exciting last half of the split, I think.
Yeah, it is going to be really awesome to watch this last split, or the last half of the split anyway. And not just because you have teams like OMG, LGD playing like that. You also have kind of the underdogs. I remember my favorite highlight of this split, even if it doesn't go very well for them afterwards, has been Snake so far. Because I remember at the very beginning of the split, watching all of the analysts, all of the LPL pundits list their tier list. And I think somebody very prominent actually had Snake as like the bottom team or the bottom 2 teams. Like, because after I believe I cast Demacia Cup and LSPL last season, watching Snake play those games, I was like, there is no way King and Snake aren't making it into the LPL. They did, and once they got there, I've always been a big proponent of the challenger scene. I was like the biggest Snake fanboy, and seeing all of the initial analysis of Snake going into to LPL just really hurt. And then to watch, it was so vindicating to watch them play. They're definitely one of my teams to watch. But to bring it back to the game at hand, it's also going to be really interesting to watch how OMG build their roster and sort of find the optimal mix of 5 players to play each individual game and play towards their players' strengths and weaknesses in a way that not a lot of teams do. Like we've seen specifically in Korea, a lot of subbing out of players in between games just because that's the way that their format works. I want to see that from other teams around the world, and OMG is really hopping on that bandwagon and actually having a lot of success with it.
Okay, man. Last few things about the swaps from OMG. Who is still your bot lane favorites to play in the bot lane for OMG? Which combo is that?
Okay, which combo I like the best? To be fair, I was not looking for a lot of big results from Xiang coming in as their support player, but he actually did fairly well. I still like Cloud as a support better than other options on OMG, and it's hard to say that there are better AD carries out there than Uzi. And I don't think that San and Cloud would necessarily make the greatest combo, even though they do have a little bit more history on the team. So I'd like to see Uzi and Cloud actually work well together, but it looks like, at least after their performance in game number 2, that may take a little bit of extra work to build that synergy.
Alright, man. Well, thank you very much. I'm gonna round up this recording. So for everyone who was watching, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.